Is the video on?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
So, Namaskar. It's been a very instructive session till now, for me at least. I have been living in Chandigarh. I have suffered at the hands of architects and the designs for almost 30 years now. And some of the, I was told that these are some of the best. So I absolutely loved the discussion that went on and how things moved over here. One of the things that I learned through this discussion was that Bhanu Patel is a seriously bad architect, and one should not be giving him any business anyway. The second thing that I did learn was that, and this is something which I discovered, that architects have great contempt for those who don't fit in with their school of thought or their school of thinking. But that would not be a very new thing for me, because when I was looking at some of the documents from the 8th, 9th century in India, that is more than 1300 years ago, even in those documents, when I'm looking at discussions going on between architects, the architects are saying it in so many words. That other fellow, my rival, he's such an idiot. He doesn't know what he's doing. His building is going to collapse definitely. My building, I should have been given this project, and this king is a complete fool for not knowing what to do. Having said that, I also know that, and I was very impressed with what Jagan Shah said earlier about architects being in dialogue with the users. And since I have had some small experience of architects, I was interfacing with Samanyu for some time in the recent past. And the amount of dialogue that happened over there, that's absolutely amazing. It's fantastic. But that is the only experience that I have seen of architects really having a dialogue with anyone. In fact, the architect with whom I was more familiar earlier, Le Corbusier was absolutely clear. Le Corbusier was absolutely clear. He was a strong socialist of the old mold of the 1920s, 1930s, and he was absolutely clear that you need to live up to his designs rather than he make designs for you to live in. Or the scape that he creates, it is for you to mold yourself according to his whims and fancies. And that was one of the big reasons why he did not seem to be getting too many projects. And when finally the government of India latched on to him as a person to design Chandigarh, that was mostly because he was simply the cheapest around. There was nothing to do with his philosophy, there was nothing to do with the projects that he had executed in the past. All those justifications happened later. The first thing which happened to take a decision that Le Corbusier should come to Chandigarh and help create this new town was that he was the cheapest one available. Once he does come in, he creates these buildings and he forces people to live up to them. Now, when I came to Chandigarh about 3 decades ago, one of the things that amazed me was these were completely new buildings of a completely new design. I had never seen buildings of this variety, and they impressed me. When I talked to the people of Chandigarh, except for the College of Architecture, the people of Chandigarh roundly condemned all the buildings in which they lived, the buildings in which they worked, the design of the streets, everything. And then I asked counter questions to them, would you prefer to go back to the slime and dirt of wherever you came from? And almost always the answer was, no, to Chandigarh ki aadat ho gayi, Chandigarh mein bhi rahenge. So I know one thing, that people do tend to mold themselves. Corbusier was not very incorrect when he said that people will mold themselves into better people. And one of the things that he did, and this was a criticism that came up against him from the sociologists, who said that if you remove street corners, it is not as if it's going to remove street corner gangs. And my experience of Chandigarh was, when you remove the street corner, it actually got rid of the street corner gang. The environment in which you lived, it molded your thinking, it molded your thought, it molded your living, it made you a better person or it made you a worse person. So when I noticed that experience, I wonder why is it that people who are commenting upon the Central Vista project, or those people who are trying to push the Central Vista project forward, they are not able to figure this one out just as easily. We have psychologists telling us that the environment in which we live, that molds us considerably. The small signs and symbols that exist around us, they mold our thinking. The signs and symbols of the imperial estate, that was the word given to this region about which we are talking. The imperial estate, which is going to be remolded into a new kind of architecture, into a new kind of living space. Why do we have so much discomfort with that? Could it be that the discomfort is not with this, but the discomfort is with the idea that it may, remember, it is Modi who is pushing this project forward, that this new set of buildings that will come up, the new landscape will come up, this landscape will somehow project itself to be a Hindu landscape. Now this Hindu business is very serious in India, and I think we have avoided it for too long, and unless we deal with it head on, unless we deal with it openly, clearly, with a balanced mind, it is not possible for us to move forward. What will happen is we will get sidelined, ignored, just as most of these English-speaking elite, the so-called Lutyens elite or the Khan market elite has been sidelined in the recent past. No one cares for the criticism, no one cares what they want to say, and they really do not seem to have much understanding of what people would like to have or what people would want. I go, wherever I go to a town which has got one of the National Galleries of Modern Arts, I visit the National Gallery. And in the National Gallery, I have to undergo such a large amount of restrictions before I can even enter the area. And once I enter that area, what I discover is that I am perhaps one of the only persons roaming around watching whatever. And at least in the case of Mumbai, next to the National Gallery is the Jahangir Art Gallery. The Jahangir Art Gallery is teeming with life. The doors are open, people just walk in, people admire whatever they want to admire, people have a cup of coffee, there are 3-4 galleries in which displays are put in. That is the kind of architect which I would like to have. This whole discussion which was going on with very heavily Delhi-centric discourse, I don't think I would agree with this Delhi-centric discourse at all. I would say that the rest of us who live in India, we have as much of a voice in this discourse as anyone else has. And as far as this construction business is concerned, there's one example which comes to my mind. I've written about it earlier also briefly, and that is when Corbusier was designing the city of Chandigarh and the buildings of Chandigarh. At that time, we had the Vidhan Sabha coming up in Bangalore. The Vidhan Sabha which was coming up in Bangalore, this Vidhan Sabha was almost identical in design to what Le Corbusier was designing in Chandigarh, modernist buildings. And as Professor Vats had mentioned earlier, Jawaharlal Nehru, when he comes to Chandigarh, when he explains what is Chandigarh all about, he says clearly, we have written about it, we have published on this. Jawaharlal Nehru says, I wish to have a town which has no history, which is not rooted in the history of India. The history of India, according to him, is too conflictual. And in this conflictual history, I would like to have a town which is completely modern and which will not have any roots within India. Now, in the case of the Vidhan Sabha, this became a point of contention because there came a time when the chief minister changed, and the new chief minister, Hanumantaiah, who came in, Hanumantaiah had a look at the design and he rejected it. There are a number of stories about why he rejected it, but when he created a new design for himself and he assigned a PWD engineer to execute the design, executive engineer by the way, when he assigned a new engineer to execute the designs, the biggest criticism that came against him was that he is creating a building which looks like a Hindu temple, like a South Indian Hindu temple. That was the biggest criticism that was made against him. Once the building did come up, then this is a standard procedure in India, people started accusing him and his team of being corrupt, of having siphoned off money, etc. Nothing came out of it, but the building that did come up, the Bangalore Vidhan Sabha, that is one of the most beautiful, iconic buildings anywhere. And it does not look like a temple. The thing is this, if we do not do away with our imperial master's image of who we are, we are not going to move forward anywhere. And perhaps that is the kind of agenda with which Modi is working. And the creating of the new Central Vista just may be part of that agenda. Otherwise, the buildings could have been repurposed, the buildings could have been modified, the old buildings could have been reused. Even those PWD design buildings of Shastri Bhavan, etc., we get used to their ugliness, and that ugliness after some time doesn't jar on our sensibilities too much. The thing is this new India needs to move forward, and perhaps it is time that we realize that we cannot continue to stick to those old-fashioned ideas. Something which has existed for 30 years is part of our architectural heritage. Something which has existed for 50, 60 years is some kind of architectural landmark. No, they are not. They're just plain, simple, ugly buildings which did not allow normal human beings, people like you and me, to enter them under normal circumstances. The National Museum building, there was nothing much about it except the small segment of elite praising what that National Museum building was. The National Archives Annexe has been around for 30 years, and I was surprised when Professor Mridula Mukherjee said that she has never been into that Annexe building. But well, that's something different. The point is this kind of reconstruction, it is going to create some trouble in the minds of the people. People will get used to it, and it would be possible for us to come up with a better imagination of what India wants to be, a better imagination of what India needs to be, and I guess we just have to live with it. Remember, the main objection to the Central Vista, is there's no functional objection to the Central Vista. The main objection is because Modi has proposed it. I know the example of Delhi, where the Delhi government had these numerous bodies of architects and aesthetes who would come up with explanations on what to do with the Chhatri at Vijay Chowk. And for 30, 40, 50, 60 years, they've not been able to put a butt of Mahatma Gandhi over there. And the numerous butts of the various viceroys and various dignitaries of the Raj, which were removed in the 1960s and the 1970s. That happened not because people had suddenly lost the desire to retain their heritage, but because people said, this is not a part of heritage that we want. This is heritage which we ditch. And therefore, you find that in Bombay, you have all that Kala Ghoda minus, the new Kala Ghoda has come up, but the old Kala Ghoda is standing at the museum ground. You have this graveyard of images in near Delhi University, the Coronation Ground, which it is called. What we have to do is, we would have to learn how to live with a new India. We will have to learn how to accept this new India, and in case it is possible to engage the public in this new India, not necessarily the elite, but the normal people of India. In case it is possible to engage with the normal people of India in the creation of this in India, it would be absolutely fantastic. And I'm absolutely amazed when a small group of elite comes up and says that they represent the people of India. Sorry, you don't. It is the MPs and the MLAs and the Panchayat Samiti members and the municipal corporation members, all of them, some of them illiterate, some of them criminals, some of them with very weird personalities. They are people who are able to move the people of India. They have a connection with the people of India. They are the ones who represent the people of India. If it is possible for you... Yeah? Chandan, you are saying something?
I'm saying yes, maybe we can conclude now.
What I'm going to say is this. If it is possible for the architects to involve the people of India in other projects, it would be absolutely fantastic. But the Central Vista project is marvelous. The Central Vista project creates a new history for us. It's a good history. And in case our problem is with this whole Hindu-Muslim thing, then perhaps we need to deal with it head on. We need to find solutions to those kinds of conflicts, and we need to find ways of moving forward in a constructive manner. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Rajiv, for bringing the issue of